This morning, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on whose lands we live and have travelled from and are coming together to celebrate on today. I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present with us today. I would like to further pay my respects and honour to our elders, both past and present. I would like to thank and acknowledge our distinguished guests this morning. This morning we are joined by the Honourable Leanne Linard, Minister for Children and Youth Justice and Minister for Multicultural Affairs. We are also joined by the Queensland Family and Child Commission's Principal Commissioner, Cheryl Vardon, and Commissioner Natalie Lewis. I would like to further welcome and thank the young people, teachers, parents and carers and stakeholders who are here with us this morning and who are joining us virtually. Some quick housekeeping. There is no scheduled fire alarm testing today, so any alarm should be treated as real, and please follow the instructions given by the fire wardens. The bathroom facilities are located on level 2, opposite the entry to the auditorium where you entered. Please ensure your mobile phones are turned to silent. So, Growing Up in Queensland is a statewide engagement project that asks children and young people aged 4 to 18 to share their views and experiences of their communities, identify issues of importance, and tell us about their hopes and dreams for the future. 2020 hailed as a unique and unprecedented year. Thankfully, the project team were able to go virtual. Children and young people were able to engage in online surveys, written postcards, and submit photos of their artworks. Before we start today's formalities, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Naraja Clay, and it is my honour to be your Master of Ceremonies today. I am a proud Kalkadoon and Boogaman woman from North Queensland, and I have lived and worked in Meanjin for the last 4 years. A little background on me. Life hasn't always been this well for me. I grew up in foster care, and as a result, I had a lack of connection to culture, some unaddressed trauma, and not a lot of understanding of what was going on in the world. But by the age of 14, I was fortunate that I was able to seek and access consistent professional support. This was something that ultimately gave me the ability to finish high school and avoid being criminalised for my symptoms of trauma. I would like to acknowledge that this is not an opportunity that all children get. I began my journey of being an advocate as a passionate teenager wanting to see better outcomes and supports for other young people, after having some poor experiences help-seeking and experiencing firsthand the impacts of youth suicide. From 2017 to 2019, I was a member of the Headspace Youth National Reference Group. In 2018, I was ministerially appointed to the Queensland Premier and Cabinet Anti-Cyberbullying Task Force. In 2019, I was ministerially appointed to the Queensland Mental Health Commission's Queensland Mental Health and Drug Advisory Council. My most recent appointment was in 2020 as the chair of the Headspace National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Group. And which brings me to today, where I have the great privilege to be your Master of Ceremonies and celebrate with you all the launch of Growing Up in Queensland 2020 report. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you this morning the Honourable Leanne Linard, MP, Minister for Children and Youth Justice and Minister for Cultural Affairs, and then we will be joined by the Queensland Family Child Commission's Principal Commissioner Cheryl Vardon and Commissioner Natalie Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and I cannot think of a better Master of Ceremonies for today. Thank you for sharing a little of your story. I know there would be so much more that we could all learn from. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this morning and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I grew up on Ngunnawal and Larrica land and am now serving the people on the spiritual totem of the Black Duck, and it was so lovely to hear in the amazing welcome to country this morning from Derek, part of my electorate represented in the stories, and that's Boondall and Banyo and Nudgee. I could have listened to Derek talking about the electorate and of course all of Brisbane again for hours and sharing that knowledge. I warmly acknowledge Ms Cheryl Vardon, Principal Commissioner and CEO of the Queensland Family and Child Commission, Ms Natalie Lewis, Commissioner, Queensland Family and Child Commission, Ms Vicki Mcdonald, Chief Executive Officer, State Library of Queensland, my Deputy Director General, Phil Brooks, Also, all special guests, and most importantly, all of the young people in the room. It is my great pleasure to be here today for the launch of the Queensland Family and Child Commission's report, Voices of Hope, Growing Up in Queensland 2020. I would like to acknowledge and thank everyone who has been involved with this report, particularly the young Queenslanders who took the time to respond and share their thoughts, their opinions and their insights. And to the QFCC for leading this important initiative. The work that you do representing the voices of children and young people across Queensland means our youth, particularly our most vulnerable children in need, are heard and importantly listened to, and it is always a pleasure to partner with you. As we all know, children and young people are a vital part of our community, and genuinely hearing their voices and amplifying those voices is critical. When we understand the perspectives of young Queenslanders, we are better able to support them to achieve their dreams, but equally to shape our great state to be one where young people's priorities and concerns are given a voice and acted upon. Sadly, not all children and young people's voices are heard, and many never have the chance to respond to opportunities like the Growing Up in Queensland survey to share their views. Not all children have the confidence to speak up about what matters, and not all are supported to do so. Often it is these children, the children who we don't hear from, that we need to hear from the most. Insights from these children are particularly valuable in helping us to ensure that our community serve all young Queenslanders and that they provide the supports vulnerable youth need to thrive and reach their dreams. In sharing their experiences, hopes, dreams, worries and fears, they help inform the big decisions governments must make to ensure their safety and well-being. My greatest responsibility as Minister for Children and Youth Justice and Multicultural Affairs is to serve the interests of the most vulnerable children and young people across Queensland. My greatest pleasure is sitting with young people in care and detention and hearing their stories, their worries, their hopes and their challenges. I am always challenged by these conversations. Equally, I am always inspired and motivated to action. Reading this report provides a similar experience, and I again thank the QFCC for that experience. One thing that struck me from the report is children, as it always does, is children and young people's passion for and insight into some of the biggest and most challenging issues in our society, like mental health, social cohesion, education and the environment. One story shared by Rupert, a 6-year-old from Brisbane, said that he hoped that the world would look after the environment so all the fish, octopus and crabs can live happily in the ocean without any rubbish. Another key issue, mental health, emerged from the survey as the biggest issue for young people, with 27% of those who filled out the survey listing it as the most important issue for people their age. One 14-year-old girl from North Queensland said, "Mental health is a very important factor in everyone's lives. Whether it's anxiety, depression or stress, everyone will experience some sort of negative mental health issue over their lifetime. This issue is the single most often raised issue by young people in my electorate of Nudgee 2. We need to listen to young people to make sure that they can access the services that are provided, to make sure that the services provided by government are actually addressing the issues that concern young people. My department is constantly asking for and listening to input from young people and their families to ensure we implement strategies, programs and practice that meets their needs. In Youth Justice, we speak with graduates of the Transition to Success Youth Council for their thoughts on how to shape policy towards youth offending and give back to their communities through projects that they lead. In our youth detention centres, we also have strong mechanisms in place, including support groups, cultural support and mentoring, so young people's views are listened to and they have a say in their safety, education and well-being. In child safety, we have strengthened the many ways we listen to children and young people in our care. Through our Supporting Families Changing Futures reform program, the voice of children and young people are enshrined in all that we do. They influence not only the decisions affecting their day-to-day life, but important life-changing decisions such as who is looking after them, the work their care team is doing, and the legal framework in which child safety works with them and their family. Most of all, we want to know how to better support vulnerable children and young people, so who better to listen to than the young people themselves? But as Phil and I know, we have a long way to go in making sure that every young person in our care meaningfully can engage in those processes and their voices be heard. This is why the findings from the Growing Up in Queensland 2020 report are so important. It allows children all over the state, from the New South Wales border to the Queensland outback to Cape York and the Torres Strait, to tell us about their communities, their hopes, and the issues of importance to them. It hears directly from children like you, not from their parents or their teachers. I am so excited to see this report is promoted through Queensland schools and through the youth groups and organisations who support our most vulnerable young people. Two of the takeaways for me from this report is that young people's experience of their communities being a safe place of belonging diminish with age. Secondly, that young people do not feel that adults listen to what young people have to say. So Cheryl, we have lots more work to do. Tonight I will meet for the first time with my 2021 Nudgee Youth Advisory Council, a group of 18, 16 to 24-year-olds who will share across my community to listen to their views of issues as diverse as education, environment, consent laws, voluntary assisted dying, public housing and youth justice, the issues that they've raised that they want me to hear their views on. My sincere hope is that they will feel genuinely heard, and I know that our community will be the richer for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Minister Linard. If you'd please join me in welcoming Principal Commissioner Cheryl Vardon to the stage. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I can't really see you because of the bright lights, but I know you're there. I too would like to thank Derek for the welcome to country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and particularly the young people, the children coming on. That's why we're here today, to acknowledge the contribution they have made to this wonderful report, Growing Up in Queensland. And out there, we've got a huge group of people watching us. We're being live streamed, and a small COVID-safe group here today. But welcome to all of you. And I particularly want to acknowledge the Minister, the Honourable Leanne Linard, Minister for Children and Youth Justice and Minister for Multicultural Affairs. And it was really heartwarming to hear her words and that she'd read the report. That was just fantastic to hear. I want to acknowledge or to welcome Vicki Mcdonald, who will be here soon as the State Librarian, and all of the work that we do, the Queensland Family and Child Commission, through Growing Up in Queensland, actually goes into something that I love saying. It goes into the memory of Queensland, into the archives of Queensland. And that is just something upon which we can reflect. It's here for good. I want to acknowledge Natalie Lewis, our Commissioner, who is with us today, and I'll hand over to her in just a little minute. And also Philip Brooks, who was the Commissioner and has now moved to work with Minister Linard as the Deputy Director General in Youth Justice, and our amazing MC, Naraja. And Naraja, it's lovely to have you here today and to listen to you. Could listen to you for a long time. So we might arrange that at some stage. Might be another appointment coming your way. And I want to acknowledge the hundreds of people attending virtually from across Queensland. People from Mount Isa, the Western Downs, Burdekin, Bowen, Rockhampton and Townsville. You're all out there. And particularly the young people who are with us today. We're here for you. So a big shout out to the students from the Tallawong State High School and the others of you who are here online and in person. And let's get right back to it and say, you, young people, You're the reason we're here. The Queensland Family and Child Commission exists to help to make your lives better, safer and happier. And growing up in Queensland, this amazing survey that we do every couple of years it tells us exactly what you want us to do. And I'm very proud of you for sharing your experiences, thoughts and opinions with you. And I used to be a school teacher a long time ago, so I'm tempted always to ask the question, how many children and young people do you think we have in Queensland? Don't worry, I won't. The answer is something like 1.2 million children and young people between 0 and 18. But of those, 8,000 or more of you actually replied to our survey, our request for your thoughts, hopes and dreams and your thoughts about the community. And that's an amazing number, particularly when we were struggling with the pandemic last year. So more than 8,000 of you, and that number grows each time we conduct a survey. So you told us what you like about where you live and what could be better. You shared your opinions on important issues and you told us your dreams for the future. And this is the important bit. You told us what you want from us, the grown-ups. And very soon, as I say to the grown-ups, those over 18, it will be you running the country, you running the state, you running our institutions and our agencies. So listening to you now will help set not only social policy, but economic policy successfully for the future. You want us to take care of the environment for you, to make communities youth-friendly, and to support you to look after your mental health, as the Minister mentioned, something we take seriously, very, very seriously. And something really important, you want to be heard. You want us to truly listen to you. It's easy to say, we hear you, and you know how parents, carers and teachers can hear you and sometimes say, oh yes, but when you grow up things will be different and don't worry about that. You shouldn't be worrying about those things right now. But actively listening to you is another set of skills, and that's what you want from us. And one young person revealed her hope that young people have a stronger voice. I hope our voices are louder, our opinions are heard more, influenced more, and are considered, regardless of our age. And some of the most insightful comments, of course, come from our 4-year-olds. With the pictures that they draw and then the little stories that we help them write on the back of the pictures. Another young person said, I think the most important issue for young people today is advocating for young people. We need a voice. And another person reflects just what I have said, and that is soon the world will be in our hands, so we should have a say and have a voice. So my advice to the adults is to listen up, because what you say is important. So we ignore what you say at our peril, I think. We, the government, decision makers, policy makers, we need to take note of what you need from us to prepare you for the future. And all of you, all of the young people to whom we're speaking right across Queensland at the moment, the ones the QFCC are in touch with all the time, you really are showing us the way, and you are optimistic. In spite of some of the things you saw happening to education, to employment, to your family, your friends, you remain optimistic. And that optimism that you is a very precious thing, because with optimism comes hope, and with hope comes energy to keep on improving the world and to keep what we know is special and keeps us safe at the moment. So what we heard from you, all of you, reassures us that you, the young people of Queensland, will do a great job, and you're doing a great job now. You are creative, caring, insightful and passionate, and you are current and emerging leaders, and never forget that. Leadership is not something reserved for the over 18-year-olds. Leadership can start from, is a quality that we all come with, and it needs to be encouraged and nurtured. And we're delighted by your innovative ideas. Can't wait to write to local governments and mayors about some of the things that you said about how communities can be improved. And we're impressed by your awareness of social issues, and we're inspired by your dreams. And we are really going to act on what you have told us. As the Minister said, we've got a lot of work to do. We're going to keep on with that work, being persistent, getting our messages out there, how to make Queensland and the world a safer place for kids. And you've told us how important it is for us to really help you. So we're going to ask decision makers to respond to the things that you've told us. Your voices are not unheard. Your voices are not in vain, and I want you to remember that. And so again, thank you. We are grateful to have heard from young people from all over Queensland and from diverse communities. And we didn't go to young people as particular groups saying, you must have issues, or we want to ask you about these particular things. We went to all young people in Queensland as citizens with an equal say, an equal opinion in how we can better run the place. So remember that, citizens of Queensland, young ones. And we are, of course, especially grateful to have heard from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people. And we made a special effort to involve Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Natalie Lewis to come to the stage now and tell us how we did that. And I want you to join with me in clapping, recognising the contribution that she has made. And Natalie has been with us for almost a year now, and gosh, that time's gone quickly, and her energy and her enthusiasm has really given us new life and energy as well. So thank you, everyone. Over to you. Natalie, is that your pen?
Thank you, everyone. As a Gamilarayina, I am a guest on country. I've lived in Brisbane pretty much my whole life, but it's really important that I acknowledge Derek, can I say Yama and Gabaninda, for welcoming us to the country of your people, and for so generously sharing with us those stories that are incredibly important for us to move forward as a united Queensland. There's this amazing lady named Laura Lundy, and she said to us only last week, "Participation is not the gift of an adult, it is the right of a child." This is a fundamental truth, and I am proud that this is the foundation on which all of the QFCC's work is built. Growing up in Queensland is a demonstration of this, and it's a demonstration of how seriously we value the right of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to participate. We are also acutely aware that while this is a right of all children, there are voices not always heard as loudly or as often. This means that we have an obligation to create space for young people to participate. As a Kamilaroi woman, I share with my colleagues a personal responsibility to ensure that the perspectives, the concerns and the aspirations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people are heard clearly in the chorus of Queensland's young people. Growing up in Queensland this year would not have been possible without the partnership of organisations such as TARS, Injalinji and the Murray School, who partnered with us to pass the mic to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids. So to all of our children and young people that so staunchly shared your stories and your vision, I say thank you. Your experience and your rights are our core business. The priorities and perspectives you continue to share will inform the work that we do to raise awareness, to advocate and to promote accountability for the rights of all children in Queensland. Our obligation continues way beyond the launch of this paper. We asked, you answered, and now we need to act. I give you my commitment as Commissioner that we will, and I thank you for your participation in growing up in Queensland. Thanks.
Beautiful. If you just join me again in thanking our distinguished guests this morning. Thank you for sharing your individual insights into what you've found out of the report and what you have seen. I really like the point that Natalie made as she was opening, saying that participation is not the gift of an adult but the right of a child. And I think that is something that absolutely needs to be kept central to all decision making. Because, I think we've heard multiple times this morning already that we are the future. And we do need to have input into that. So I'd also like to thank the people who have made this project possible. Projects like Growing Up in Queensland did not exist when I was a child or a teenager. Giving voice to and sharing the fears, hopes and dreams of the futures of this country is vital to the progression of the world. After all, we are actively shaping the world we want to live in. We are shaping our safe spaces, communities, politics, education, environment and health. We are the future. One of the overall findings I'd like to speak to is that children and young people are passionate about participating in the conversations that affect their lives. I'm going to explain a little bit of my journey about finding my voice. To begin with, it didn't actually start in a classroom. High school was challenging for me. My voice wasn't represented or respected. It was challenging too, in the sense that I didn't know my culture or have a strong sense of identity. General knowledge about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and the impacts were not factually being discussed. The bias and discrimination I faced unfortunately made school an unsafe place for me. This impacted on how I felt about my education and my desire to engage in school. It wasn't until I joined my local council's youth advisory group when I was 16 and in year 12 that I finally felt listened to. I can easily tell you that it was because I felt as though I was around adults that valued what I had to say and their actions matched their words. I worked hard to develop knowledge specific to the area of youth mental health. I would spend hours reading documents like the National Mental Health Plan. It wasn't until I was 20 that I finally had the opportunity to go back home and connect with country and family. I believe this was a fundamental step in finding my voice. I realised I came from a long line of strong Aboriginal women. I realised that I was actually embarking on a similar journey that my grandmother had been on when she was young. This ultimately helped me to find the confidence and figure out how to manage my self-doubt. Over the years, the biggest thing I've had to learn to manage was advocacy fatigue. I found myself wondering if the advocacy I'd spent years doing actually meant anything. I had to learn how to manage unmet expectations and remind myself that this is a journey and not a sprint. To move on to the next section, we have the great privilege of being joined by the Ancient Bloods, a band created by Digi Youth Arts, which is a not-for-profit organisation that shares the stories of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people. The song these young people will be sharing with us this morning is titled I Stand Tall. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming the Ancient Bloods to the stage.
Hello everyone, we are the Ancient Bloods. Oh, you good? So my name is Michaela Stubbs. I am a Darug woman, which is down Blue Mountains, Sydney area.
Hello, my name is Nadia. I'm a Bachelor woman from Fraser Island and Guddawa from Gulf of Carpentaria.
My name's Andrew Coleman. I'm a Bundjalung man, grew up in Jinnabara country.
Hey, I'm Lockie. I'm a Jabba Jabba man. My mob's from Broome, and I'm living on Yugambeh country.
So the song we're performing for you guys today is called I Stand Tall. I had the privilege of writing this song, and it's a really good song, so I hope you enjoy it. I'm awesome. rush by when it's in our buildings by its side. And I know you feel it in your hair, but I feel it everywhere. And I see the world change from up above in a way that you will think is great. But I feel the damage you inflict below, pulling my roots from where they grow. And the green of my hands may brush me dry, and the rain on my cheek may make me cry, and my legs may choke on the ground you tear. But I stand tall, you won't lay me bare. And I've seen the world change to 100 years, and I've seen it change with a million eyes. I remember the view before the buildings grew, and the smell when the river was blue. And I'm stuck with everything you left behind, and I know times will be better when you're through. And the green of my hands may brush me dry, and the rain on my cheek may make me cry, and my legs may choke on the ground you tear. But I stand tall, you won't lay me bare. When there's no more kids to play, will you realize what you've done? When there's no more air to breathe, will you think that you've still won? I'm gonna stay for as long as I can, but it's up to you. So what's the plan? And the green of my hands may brush me dry, and the rain on my cheek may make me cry, and my legs may choke on the ground you tear. And the green of my hands may brush me dry, and the rain on my cheek may make me cry, and my legs may choke on the ground you tear. But I stand tall, you won't lay me bare. That was beautiful. Please join me in thanking again the Ancient Bloods. I think one thing that I wanted to, I took from that song was that, and I had a chat with the band before we got started this morning, but I guess despite the thing that came across to me was that despite the attempted and arguably ongoing attempted eradication of the First Nations people, we as young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are here, and we do have things to say on important topics, and we will be heard, and we do see what is going on in the world around us and in this country. We see how our peers are treated, we see how our parents are treated, we see how our uncles and aunties are as well, and despite that, we stand tall as young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people. So thank you for that. To move on to the next item, we're going to have a keynote speech. So in 2018, I had the pleasure of being on the Premier and Cabinet Anti-Cyberbullying Task Force with our keynote speaker. So it feels as though it's almost a full circle to introduce him to you all this morning. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Taj Pabari. He is an inspirational and hardworking young man whom is regarded to be one of Australia's youngest and most successful entrepreneurs. He is also the CEO of the Australian School of Entrepreneurship. In 2014, Taj was named the Australian Young Innovator of the Year, an award given to Australia's most exciting innovator and emerging talent. In 2017, Taj was awarded the Young Australian of the Year for Queensland, making him the youngest recipient since the award was established in 1979.
Please all join me in warmly welcoming Taj to the stage to present this morning's keynote.
G'day everyone, how are we? Wow, that's loud. How are we, everyone? Oh, come on, we can do a little bit better than good. It's the launch of the QFCC report. How are we, everyone? Still a couple of goods, but that's okay. Mark Twain says there are two significant days of our lives. Number one, the day we're born, and number two, the day we understand why. For me, I was lucky. I knew my passion, and I made sure I did a lot of it. Unfortunately, for a lot of young people, that's quite simply not the case. You see, in school, we're told, do very well in school, and you'll get into university. Do very well in university, you'll get a good internship. From internship to junior job to senior job, the rat race continues. Now, there'd be nothing really wrong with that if success in traditional education still correlated to success in the real world. You see, according to the latest OECD report, between the relationship between higher education and employers, Australia comes in 33 out of 33. Last. To me, that speaks volumes about the misalignment and disconnect between the people who are supposed to be training our young people and the people actually employing these people. Here's a thought. The average 4-year-old asks 100 questions per day. Most kindergarten students think of themselves as artists. What changes? Well, together as students, when we well and truly get stuck, or may I even say trapped in our current education system, we come to understand that it's more important to have the right answer than to ask a creative and unique question. We begin to believe that we're at school to merely absorb information rather than to create and to apply it. The unfortunate result is the fact that we have young people graduating with certificates, which in many cases are a mere indication of seat time served. So who am I talking to about education? Well, you see, this is me on my first day of preschool, prep classroom C with Mrs. Waddingham, and I was a nerd. I absolutely loved technology. I was fascinated by electronics, and when people used to ask me, hey Taj, what do you want to do when you grow up? Which, first of all, is a terrible question to be asking a young person. But when people used to ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I used to say technology. I didn't really know in what industry, I didn't know why. All I knew is that the world of electronics and the world of technology made me tick. Through school, I struggled. As I went through primary school, I was consistently getting into trouble. I saw occupational therapists, I saw speech therapists, and really getting anything out of me in school was like punching blood out of a stone, impossible. I reached 3 or 4 suspensions by grade 6 and was on probation around that period as well, and kind of realized that school probably wasn't the place for me. I found my passion. I knew what I wanted to do. I was excited about it, and I wanted to do more of it. I was inspired by people like Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, and Bill Gates. I hated going to school, but I'd be waking up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning to watch these guys on YouTube and watch them launch products that would one day change the world. So one day I thought, that sounds kind of cool, let's do it. I was 13 at the time, and I had this idea of 21st century Lego. It was an organization called 56 Creations, and our goal, or my goal at the time, was to teach kids about digital literacy. It was a fascinating learning experience. We taglined it the Lego of the 21st century. It was a do-it-yourself tablet kit for kids. We sold 10,000 units through media, as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, going through actually starting a real business with millions of dollars of pre-orders, it was fascinating. I was on probation at school, but had this amazing life outside of the classroom. I started learning things like negotiation, public speaking. I understood basic Mandarin, really small, amazing pieces of skills that I would have only learnt from having a life outside of the classroom. 56 Creations didn't really go anywhere, and we didn't really in fact, it was quite a disaster by the end. We ended up refunding all 10,000 orders, all of the pre-orders, because we didn't have a manufacturing chain. But I ended up joining the Australian School of Entrepreneurship a couple of years ago as chief executive. And we kind of thought, well, the hardest part of starting a business is actually creating a product that people want. At 56 Creations, we absolutely created a product people wanted. In fact, we sold 10,000 units with only one prototype, and thought, how cool would it be if we could teach other young people how to start their own businesses and focus on micro businesses, something that's practical and something that can actually teach young people really incredible life skills. At ASC, we teach young people about how to start micro businesses, and we've also put together the largest community of young entrepreneurs. So if you've got a young entrepreneur at home, or you are a young entrepreneur right now, we'd invite you to join. It's free for our students, and we'd love to have you part of our community. So, you know a little bit about me, but what if we became known as a country of innovation? A country that identified problems and came up with very real, innovative solutions to solve them. I've always believed that Australia is a highly innovative country, but is that because of or in spite of our education system? Before I go through some of the skills that I believe every young person needs to thrive, not just survive in the innovation economy, I thought we'd play the 50 million game. Who's played this before? Hands up. No one. Sweet. Alrighty. So the telephone, I'm going to put a picture of a piece of technology on the board, and you're going to yell out how long it took to reach 50 million users. Telephone, who wants to start? How long did the telephone take to get to 50 million users? We've got 50 years it took the telephone to get to 50 million users. Close. What about the TV? 20, 22, very close, well done. We've got Facebook. How long did it take Facebook to get to 50 million users? 3 years. It's accelerating. All right, Angry Birds. Less. 35 days, we were close. Now the final one is the only one that people have actually died playing in. Can anyone tell me the last one? Pokemon Go, fantastic. 19 days. It took Pokemon Go just 19 days to reach 50 million users. You see, the rate of change is accelerating at a truly unprecedented rate. Technology has connected us all. There's never been a better time for young people to get started in their career right here and right now. So today I thought I'd talk about the 3 skills that I probably should have learned in the classroom. The first one is creativity. In the words of Dr. Seuss, why fit in when you were born to stand out? Or in simple terms, be a Fruit Loop in a world full of Weet-Bix. Creativity is a skill that's innately human. If we start looking at the future of work, we've placed this huge emphasis on digital skills, technical skills, computer programming. But really, when you start looking at what Microsoft is doing right now, they're creating systems that code themselves. What are skills that young people in Australia should be playing in? They should be playing in innately human skills, skills that machines will never ever be able to replicate. How many times in school do we truly practice creativity? Not many. And it's a skill that I believe every young person really needs as they enter that 21st century economy. The second one is communication. Now, I hated public speaking in school, and for a lot of young people, when we visit our classrooms, public speaking is literally scarier than snakes and spiders. That's scary, right? Because on average, employers are paying an average of $7,356 extra to a junior employee if they have the ability to communicate and public speak. Communication, once again, is an innately human skill. Public speaking is a skill that school thinks they teach us. We do oral presentations, but we spend 8 weeks preparing for them. We write a script, and as long as we make the occasional amount of eye contact, we do all right grade-wise. That's a problem, because that's not really what public speaking is about. It's about getting up on stage and delivering an impromptu presentation. I believe every young person should be building their rituals, their routine before getting up on stage in the classroom. I was able to do that because I had a life outside of the classroom, but for the 99% of other young people in the classroom, they're missing out on public speaking in school. Now, the third one is really interesting because if school's all about preparing us for the real world, how much more real is learning about financial literacy? Things like compound interest, superannuation, skills that every young person, regardless of what career pathway or background, are going to need to know and understand. Instead of spending our time learning long division or trying to solve the elusive mystery of what is X, this is the time when we as young people can be learning core financial literacy skills. So before I wrap up, I urge you, as you go back to your workplaces, to your schools, to sit down and discuss how we together as educators, as government, as industry, and of course as young people, can come together to truly ensure the next generation of young people have the skills they need to thrive, not just survive. To wrap up, I thought I'd leave you with one of my favorite quotes from another former naughty schoolboy who not only managed to connect the dots, but managed to split them as well. He says, "True intelligence is not about knowledge, but imagination." Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that, Taj. Yeah, I think they were all very valuable points that were highlighted again. The financial literacy one is something that's really funny, a personal story. The other week I was on the phone to one of my friends that I finished high school with, and we ended up talking of all things about how we don't really know how to do our taxes. We kind of have an idea, but we learned how to eat an apple because that's good nutrition, and we learned some other things that probably didn't come over into my adult life as skills that I needed. Anyway, moving on, it truly is a pleasure to introduce to you all a young woman by the name of Anissa. She is a nationally recognised spoken word poet, playwright, educator and published actor. She has performed at the Sydney Opera House, Splendour in the Grass, the Queensland Poetry Festival, Women of the World Festival, and has toured the country sharing stories of love and courage. Anissa is also the co-founder of the arts collective Voice of Colour, which creates spaces for migrant, refugee and First Nations artists to share their work. Anissa, the youth champions who are Ben, Bida and Amaya, and the Growing Up in Queensland project team are going to, and the project staff were Anthony, Hamish and Elise. They are going to come and join us on stage to present to us the findings from the Growing Up in Queensland 2020 report. So please join me in warmly welcoming Anissa, the youth champions and the amazing Growing Up in Queensland project staff to the stage.
When you reach the place, you will know. The place where smiles sail across an ocean of skin, just to touch a stranger's face. The place where a woman stopped her car in the middle of the rain, just to offer me an umbrella. The slightest of reminders that we are separate, but we are together. We are different, yet we are the same. The place where my neighbor was stuck in the traffic of his own thoughts, but he took one moment to ask, "Hey, what's your name?" And when you reach the place, you will know. The place where laughter swings in playgrounds. The place where basketball courts form the moment. Where friends become brothers. The parks where friends become sisters. The place where we go up to cash registers and we use time to buy moments. When you reach the place, when you reach community, I promise you will know.
Thank you. Young people's experiences of their communities matter. Young people who feel an attachment to their community, who experience a sense of belonging, and who feel respected by adults in their community are less likely to experience negative outcomes, such as mental health difficulties. And the protective effect of community connectedness applies even to young people who are especially vulnerable. Given the importance of communities, a focus on communities is an intrinsic part of the Queensland Family and Child Commission's work. Part of our purpose is to promote the responsibility of both families and communities to protect and care for children and young people. So we want to know how young people feel about their communities. What could make their communities better for young people? Do they feel a sense of belonging to their communities? Do they feel safe? Do they feel like adults in their community really listen to what they have to say? In response to these questions, young people sent us strong messages about their communities. Ben, one of our youth champions, will tell you about what we heard. Thanks.
Thank you, Anthony, and good morning, everyone. Community. It's one of the fundamental values that bonds us together as Queenslanders. Whether it's our maroon colours at State of Origin or snorkelling through the Great Barrier Reef, the Sunshine State is bound together by a proud sense of community that we see each and every day. And for young people, community connectedness is vital in providing opportunities. As Anthony mentioned, young people thrive when they feel a sense of community. Through the Growing Up in Queensland report, we heard numerous stories about young people and how they perceive their community. They love outdoor spaces for recreation. They're grateful for the friendliness of community members, and they appreciate spaces that allow young people to relax with their peers. These are things that we heard over and over again. However, the project also highlighted that young Queenslanders are diverse, and as such, they experience their communities in diverse ways. An example of this is young people who had an emotional or mental health condition. 47% of these young people with a mental health or emotional condition felt safe in their community. 47%. It's below half. Moreover, only 42% of young people with an emotional or mental health condition felt a sense of belonging. It's clear that the diverse young people in Queensland are facing unique challenges, even more so with the current pandemic. So, what does the future look like for our community? How can those who we call change makers support young people growing up in Queensland? To answer these questions, I'd like to share a few highlights direct from the Growing Up in Queensland report. One respondent said, "Our community would be better if it had more youth-friendly spaces for relaxing and socialising." Another, "Our community would be better with a bigger aqua park." And the last which I would like to highlight is our community would be better if adults listened to young people, accepted their opinions, and provided an opportunity for them to have a voice. Reflecting on this last quote, only 23% of young people who participated in the project said that adults in their community actively listened to their opinions. So, at the heart of our community is young people waiting for the opportunity to be heard, because they told us that they can distinguish the difference between friendliness and true listening. As a young person, I want to see those experiencing an emotional or mental health condition to feel a sense of community connectedness. I want to see more than 23% of my peers feel as though adults actively listen to their opinions. Personally, I suppose I also wouldn't mind seeing a bigger aqua park. If there's anything that I'd like you to take away from today, it's that being heard and being listened to are two completely different things. These are the voices of our young people growing up in Queensland. Thank you.
Pass the Parcel is a game that entails passing an object from one person to another. And young people have been passed ideas from a generation that we've never met. We've been passed these ideas, passed these ideas, passed these ideas of silence. But we've never been taught how to unwrap the pain sticky taped to the bottom of our tongues. I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm good, are the only phrases that we are taught when we are young, to the point that young people become magicians. We learn how to make our anxiety disappear as soon as we step in front of a group. But it's always hidden somewhere behind the curtains. We're past these ideas, past these ideas, past these ideas of an outdated education system. We aren't taught how to do taxes, how to start a business, or how to invest in ourselves, or that pursuing your dreams is the truest form of wealth. But we're past these ideas, past these ideas, past these ideas. That the environment somehow belongs to us. The land, the sky, the trees, when really we hold them as a trust fund for our great-great-great-great-grandchildren to one day see. But we're past these ideas, past these ideas, past these ideas. That bullying only affects the victim. But if you make yourself bigger by making someone else feel small, you've learned it from society, and that implicates us all. We're past these ideas that minimize the importance of the environment, mental health, a progressive education system, and young people are asking us to stop.
The Queensland Family and Child Commission promotes the wellbeing of all young Queenslanders. Children and young people tell us that they want to live in a community that supports them to thrive. Knowing what is important to children and young people helps to create a more inclusive community. And just as Ben said, they want us to listen. Through growing up in Queensland, we asked young Queenslanders about the most important issues for them. Among many of the themes that emerged was the theme of mental health, a top priority for children and young people. At the QFCC, we heard this loud and clear, and that's why in February we hosted a youth mental health hackathon to delve a little bit deeper into this theme. And through the video that's going to play shortly, you'll hear what they had to say. Thank you.
Should be easier for us with mental health these days, but it's not.
Young people are under a lot of stress. Well, I want to see solutions from both sides of the table to see what I can do for everybody. Our generation actually has the language to be able to describe the problems that we're facing, and we want to address that. We've got a lot of expectations to live up to. This is us doing something about that.
I've had to adjust really quickly to living by myself. It's just things that are so simple that it seems really silly looking back that we didn't learn. Like these important little simple life skills from school where it would be really easy to learn.
But it would be good to actually have programs that will help us when we actually graduate, not help us going into university, help us in our life in general.
We're currently going through a massive climate emergency, and it's our generation that is pretty much the one that is getting stuck with that. We grew up with this, we can see it happening, and we want to do something about it, and we want our voices heard.
Thank you, Hamish, and good morning. Young people are not only Queensland's future, but today's changemakers. Youth perspectives on world issues can generate new and innovative solutions to any and all problems. We asked young Queenslanders what they believed the most important issues of today are, and they fed back with insightful and matter-of-fact responses. The three most pressing issues young Queenslanders discussed were mental health, education, and the environment. Facing a pandemic the likes of which they had never experienced before, young Queenslanders persevered. Mental health is just as important as one's physical health, and more than a quarter of teens identified it as the most important issue, citing the stresses of education and health during a pandemic, as well as issues with anxiety and depression. Age was a massive factor in this, with older teens much more likely than younger teens to identify mental health as an important issue. Young people are concerned about the stigma around mental health, calling for improved access to services and more education about mental health, with people suffering from mental health issues being twice as likely to experience bullying. Needless to say, this isn't something that we can just let continue. As for Year 12s, 2020 was a year of firsts. The first year of exams under the new ATAR system, and of course, their first and hopefully, last pandemic. Consequently, 83% of 18-year-old survey participants reported experiencing academic stress, reflecting young people's struggles with balancing increasing responsibilities. We cited concerns around academic results and entry into further study, and indeed the impact of COVID-19 on our results and future plans, with many struggling with online learning. Young Queenslanders are calling for a more relevant curriculum, less focus on grades and more preparation for adult life. However, education is important and has given young Queenslanders the skills to advocate for issues they care deeply about, which brings us to young Queenslanders' concerns about the state of the environment. Addressing issues like climate change and habitat destruction following the deadly bushfires of early 2020, many young people said adults need to take the environment more seriously. Yet young people have an incredibly strong ability to adapt and advocate for big issues which not only impact them, but those around them. Paying attention to young voices is crucial for our society and empowers young people to create change in their communities. As a young woman, I thank you for your interest in our concerns and indeed for listening to what we, the youth, believe are the big issues in Queensland.
You're standing at the edge of the cliff, and in your bones, you have every intention to fly. So I hand you this locket with 2 words engraved, what if? What if you are good enough? And what if your words dropped from your lips like chandeliers and positivity lit the way? What if your dreams are waiting for you tomorrow and all you need to do is take a single step today? What if you woke up every single morning and said, I am talented, I am good enough? What if you made being honest about what you want your plan A so you don't even need a plan B? What if? What if you could achieve your dreams? What if you could go to university, TAFE, study a trade, study the arts, open your own business? What if your job was to fulfill your dreams so you can never be fired? What if your purpose was to be yourself? That is your only task. How could anyone else ever be hired? What if? You're standing at the edge of this cliff. So I hand you this locket with 2 words engraved, what if? What if today was your day and now is your moment? What will you do with it?
Hope. Hope is important, is an intrinsic part of wellbeing. It carries young people into the future with enthusiasm and supports young people to set and achieve goals. So, what do our young Queenslanders hope for? We want to know, because we want children and young people to grow up in communities that help them to achieve these goals. So, we asked participants what they want to be when they grow up and what their hopes for the future are. We asked teens how hopeful they feel about their futures. As Bitter explained, young people see the big issues around them. They are aware of the issues that need to be addressed: education, mental health, environment. And this awareness translates into hopes. Hopes for themselves, hopes for others, hopes for their world. Youth Champion Amaya will share with you the hopes of Queensland's children and young people.
Thank you, Elise, and good morning, everyone. It's It's difficult to say what is impossible. The dream of yesterday is the hope for today and the reality for tomorrow. And if anything, growing up in Queensland has shown us that young people are passionate and determined to achieve things in their personal lives and share collective hopes and dreams to work together to build a better future. Young people of Queensland are diverse in experiences and visions for the future. However, the project found that many young people shared 3 common hopes and dreams. Many of those from ages 8 to 18 hoped to find employment during or after high school, wished to complete their education, or had hopes for the environment. These findings don't surprise me. Education is a necessary tool to advance further and unlock many opportunities in this competitive world. And we live in an environment that's uncertain, especially regarding climate change, its impact, and action taken to address it. As young people, we simply wish to unlock our full potential in a world that's often overwhelming, uncertain, and rapidly changing. We simply wish to help ourselves, our communities, and our planet as we work together to create a better world and follow the paths that we're passionate about. As someone in Year 11, I'm already met with expectations regarding life after high school and employment after school. I'm very conscious of the way the future may turn out. And these expectations and thoughts of other teenagers are perfectly represented in this report, with teens having their hopes and dreams focused more on employment and education. Young people hope for security and a good future, whether that be for themselves or their communities. And 56% of youth across the state feel optimistic about this future. In the age of social media and technology, children and young people are more connected than ever, and we're exposed to more issues in society, even if we don't experience them ourselves. As a result, we share a vision of hope for a better future for all. One of the main findings of growing up in Queensland was that as young people, we not only have hopes for ourselves, but others too. We hope for a safer, more equal society where homelessness and poverty are less of an issue, and people in the future have less hurdles to overcome in order to fly. In having hopes for others, we are united and driven to work together to create positive change. And because of all of the resources around us, we are determined to create changes to address issues experienced by either ourselves or those around us. And in doing so, as young people, we are working towards a better future for ourselves and generations to come. Thousands of young people, just like myself, around the state, together dream of a better world and hope for secure employment and education. As we, as young people, grow and work with others, we share our hopes and dreams and work towards making it a reality, the reality of tomorrow.
Thank you again, Anissa, the Youth Champions, and the Growing Up in Queensland project team. Young people across Queensland reminded us that they value kindness, helpfulness, and friendliness in the people of their communities. They also reminded us that it is important that they are involved in the conversations that affect their lives. We are reminded that education, environment, and mental health are important to our young people too. Young people are reminding us regularly that they have a voice too, and they won't be silenced. The greatest examples of this I can recall were the mass protests that took place internationally regarding climate change and Black Lives Matter. At the forefront of 2 powerful mechanisms of change stood young people. So you should definitely congratulate yourselves. So as I close today, a challenge I am leaving with government and other decision makers is, how are you ensuring that young people have input into the development of policies and projects, input into the implementation, and input into the evaluation? How are you ensuring that decisions being made truly reflect the views, wishes, and concerns of young people? A phrase we've come to know well in the mental health space is "nothing for us without us." I think this wholeheartedly applies to young people, and this is a phrase that we should live by, we should learn it, and we should love it. To our young people who are with us today in person and who are joining us virtually, this is your time to shine. There has never been a better time to dream about your future and start planning the steps of how to get there. Don't be scared to ask those questions, and don't worry about your dreams not being conventional or traditional. It isn't luck that gets you there. At the end of the day, it's a lot of hard work. But remember too, it's important to rest and look after yourself. Before we do conclude the formal part of today's event, it is my great honour to introduce the presentation of the Growing Up in Queensland findings to the State Library of Queensland's Queensland Memory. The State Library's Queensland Memory Archive will allow the findings to be preserved and shared with researchers, so the voices of Queensland's children and young people in 2020 will be available in years to come. Will you please join me in welcoming the Principal Commissioner of the Queensland Family and Child Commission, Cheryl Vardon, and Vicki Mcdonald, the State Librarian and Chief Executive Officer.
It's my very great pleasure in just a moment to hand over this very precious record of what young people have said to us in last year and this year. But before I do that, I want to thank the team from the Queensland Family and Child Commission who put all of their hard work as well into making this a successful product. Will you please stand up, please? Please stand up. Hamish and Elise and Andy and Kirby and the others who are here as well. Would you please join with me in thanking the QFCC staff? Because I know what they've had to go through. And it's my great pleasure now, as I mentioned, this goes into the memory of Queensland, to hand to Vicki, head of the State Library. State Library is one of our staunchest partners. We have a wonderful relationship with them. To hand this over to you for safekeeping for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And as you said, this is an important report, and part of the role of State Library is to document today's history and what is happening in today's society for future generations. And just listening to the presentations today and excerpts from the report, I know that this will be a really valuable resource in our collections for future generations. So thank you very much. Thank you.
So this does conclude today's event. I would like to thank again the wonderful Growing Up in Queensland team and everyone who's made today possible. We have run a little bit over time quickly, so if you do have the time to join us next door on the terrace for morning tea, it would be a pleasure to see you all there. Thank you.